Welcome back to Creating Cooperative Kids. I'm your host, Bill Corbett. Parents of teenagers worry about the day they begin to drive, if they haven't started already. Now, my wife and I raised several of our own and still have one at home who will be driving later this year. My next guest has some detailed suggestions and guidelines for parents of teens to follow to ensure that our kids learn safe driving habits. Tim Hollister was named the AAA Club of Southern New England's Traffic Safety Hero of the Year in 2013, and in 2010 he received the U.S. Department of Transportation's National Public Service Award, the nation's highest civilian honor for traffic safety. He's the author of the book, Not So Fast, Parenting Your Teen Through the Dangers of Driving, and author of the blog From Reed's Dad that now attracts more than 20,000 visitors per month and is relied upon by traffic safety organizations, driving schools, and parents throughout the country. Mr. Hollister is an environmental attorney and a father who lost his son Reed in 2006 to a driving accident. Welcome back to the show, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I really want us to help educate parents about what they can do, specifically they can do. And I think part of it is to start changing their mindset about their teens and driving. What do you think?
I agree. And maybe the place to start, a tip that covers a lot of ground, if you will, is don't put your own convenience ahead of your teen's safety. When your teen gets a license, it is so convenient to have, you got a new pickup and delivery service, you have a chauffeur, you've been getting up at the crack of dawn to drive your other children to school, and now you have somebody that can do that for you. There's so many places where it's easy to just let your teen take the keys and go, but it's not safe to do so. So that's and that's a real mindset change, as you were alluding to. The second thing is when I do my presentations, I've come up with a formula that people say, okay, I read your blog, I read your book, where do I start? What I've come up with is PACTS, PACTS, the 5 biggest dangers in teen driving. And I tell parents, if you're not going to create a safe driver, but if you can get your arms around these 5, you'll be well on your way. So number 1 is passengers, because as we were saying, joyriding in passengers is the most dangerous situation. Number 2 is alcohol. Now, I'm not an expert in alcohol, but obviously alcohol and driving is a huge national problem, and it's particularly a problem for teens. C is curfews, night driving. We see a lot of crashes after 11 o'clock, midnight. Parents have to work with their teens because managing curfews, make sure that they're off the road in accordance with state law, requires some planning. They have to know what time they have to leave to come back so they're not rushing and so forth. T is texting. 0 tolerance for the electronic devices, and by the way, that's not just cell phones, that includes the dashboard mounted interactive screens that are becoming so prevalent in cars.
Right.
And S is seatbelts. I mean, that should be a no-brainer. Every teen driver and every passenger of a teen driver should have a seatbelt on all the time.
Now, one thing that we brought up in the first segment, I just want to reiterate here is as you indicated, the prefrontal cortex of the brain is not fully developed until around age 22 or so.
Right.
And that's the part of the brain that gives them their ability to judge, to be able to forward thinking, to say cause and effect, if I do this, this is going to happen,
right.
All those kinds of things. And instead, what is part of that brain is overpowered by the risk. And so I just want to get viewers to understand, our kids aren't bad, they're not bad kids, it's just biologically, that's what they're confronted with. That's the issue when it comes to giving them activities or letting them do things that create more risk.
Yeah. And no amount of driving experience is going to overcome that brain development.
Yeah, and you mentioned something before about the number of hours of experience of driving that they don't have.
Well, typically in the United States, teens get licensed after 40 or 50 hours, and it really takes 3 to 5 years to become a relatively safe driver. So the amount of hours that we require to get a license is nothing. And which is sort of another tip for parents, is that parents should not think that because their son or daughter has taken driver's ed and has passed the state's road test and written test that they're a safe driver. They're a beginner at a very dangerous undertaking.
Yeah. This is a great book, and you say this came originally from your blog,
correct,
which is a great opportunity to put all the pieces together that you had time to think about. One of the sections that I noticed in your book is about traffic tickets as teaching moments.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Well,
you don't want to start the conversation with your teen when they come home with a ticket in their hand talking about the stupid law enforcement and they really didn't do anything wrong. Well, if they have a ticket, chances are they probably did something wrong. But I think it's very important that teens understand respect for law enforcement. As an example, when Massachusetts implemented its teen driver law, its stricter law, a couple of years ago, there were stories in the paper of parents going with their teens to court and yelling at the prosecutors. And that was, in my view, that was really because you're now curbing, Mike, the convenience that I have of a teen driver, and you're threatening to take that away. The parents went ballistic about that. But think about that, a parent yelling at a prosecutor with the teen standing right there. Parents need to tell their teens, you need to respect law enforcement because the law is there for a reason, and the people who enforce it are doing it for a very good reason, which is your own safety.
I think some of that too is a lot of parents suffer from the halo effect.
Yes.
My kid? No, my kid wouldn't do that.
Well, when parents say my kid is very responsible, I tell them that the key word in that sentence is kid.
Yeah, right, exactly. Notice another chapter you have here is on the ceremony of the keys.
Yes.
Because it says I'm taking notes now because
Yeah.
I've got one coming up for driving.
Right. Well, I try to encourage parents to adopt the attitude of an air traffic controller. That's another chapter in the book. The car doesn't leave the driveway until you go over a safety checklist with your teen. And one of the things that you do is, I'm about to give you the keys. You're about to do something very dangerous, making a big deal of turning over the keys each and every time your teen gets behind the wheel. I always say you wouldn't toss the keys to an airplane to a pilot and say, just be careful, and you shouldn't do that with a teen driver either. So make a big deal about turning over these car keys and go through your safety checklist every time, especially in the first year of driving.
And I think one thing that teens do is because they try to, come on, Dad, all right. Come on, dude, I'm fine.
It's not easy.
And so they try to deflect that.
Right.
And it causes parents to go, okay, I won't say anything. But I think you're right. They need to be persistent. They really need to make it formal. This is not just a joke. This is not something, you're putting them out there on a highway with tons of steel, and it's a safety issue, big safety issue.
Yeah.
Negotiating and enforcing an agreement.
Yeah.
I like this one.
Well, a parent-teen driving agreement is an essential and very underutilized tool. This is something you negotiate. You don't just tell them. You negotiate with your teen in the quiet, usually across the kitchen table. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, what are the rules and what are the consequences if the rules are broken in the calm, not when they come home all flustered because they've got a ticket. I did about 2 years of research. There's hundreds and hundreds of models of teen driver agreements. But I took what I thought were the best practices, and in my book is a model, a national model of a teen driving agreement. Connecticut has actually adopted its own model that was based somewhat on mine, so that I was very gratified at that. But it's number one is setting right down there what the risks are, and parent and teen initial the risks. Clear rules. I see so many agreements from national organizations that the rules just aren't very clear. If I violate the law, I may lose my privileges. Well, what do you mean you may lose your privileges? And then at the end, a commitment to safety. But it's important that this be a collaborative process. So it's a very important and very underutilized tool.
Now, we mentioned before in the first segment, and also you have a chapter on it, when they should really start driving.
Well, there's the issue of the age, of the legal age versus the age of responsibility. And so maybe turn that around. An important piece of advice for parents is don't push a teen who's not ready to drive to do so. Don't think that you're going to get your teen to grow up faster by driving. That's exactly the wrong way to push their progress. So, parents have to make their judgment as to whether their teen has the emotional maturity. We talked about the vision, the judgment. Teens, as much as the teen brain isn't developed until we're in our early 20s, not every kid is the same, and you need to make that assessment. There is a segment of kids that are not ready to drive when the law says they can start to get their learner's permit, and parents have to know which is which.
Tell me about texting and electronic devices.
Well, texting is driving blindfolded. You're taking your hands off the wheel, your eyes off the road, and your mind off the situation. I advocate a zero tolerance policy for parents, by which I mean the cell phone goes in the glove box before the ignition is turned on, and it stays there until the ignition is turned off. I am not a fan of these apps where the phone is in the cradle and it's supposed to send an electronic message, I'm driving, I'll call you later. Well, it's better than nothing, but if the phone is in the cradle, the temptation to pick it up is just almost overwhelming. You talk about one side of the brain overwhelming the other. So, if you think about the fact that texting makes a crash 23 times more likely than normal driving, which is already dangerous for a teen. I mean, it's a crash and injury waiting to happen. And parents just, and parents have to be role models. And I tell parents that, if you've got one of those interactive screens in your car and you're pushing the buttons and you're reading a restaurant review or updating your Facebook page while you're driving, you're going to have a hard time telling your teen not to text because you're doing something just as bad.
And our generation now with their texting devices, it's psychologists have proven that they're now in this, I got to check the post, I got to check this post, I got to check this post. And it's actually a huge distraction. So the temptation to touch that electronic device while it's in the cars.
The teens need to feel connected. That's a very powerful magnetic force.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're out of time, but thank you so much, Tim, for coming out. I really appreciate all the effort that you've put in to turning your tragedy into something that's probably going to save thousands of lives. The more education you do, the more products you put out there. So, and I appreciate you being on the show to help us educate more parents.
Thank you.
So all the best to you.
Thank you.
Experts say that children from divorced families are twice as likely to drop out of high school and are less likely to attend college than children from non-divorced families. Now, my next guest says that divorce creates some security issues for children, and we'll meet her and learn more about this issue when we return from a short break. Don't go away.